Hello, Rita. Hello, Michelle, Dan, Elissa, the great world beyond.
Hello.
We're waiting for folks in the hall to get us linked up.
Hey, everybody. Good evening.
Hey, Dan.
Hey, Dan.
I just got a note from Don Tollerman saying he's going to be 15 minutes late. So we'll wait a couple of minutes, but then I think at the very least what we could do before he gets here is flesh out some of the areas for discussion without actually discussing them yet. So those of you who are present, if you can think through what some of the issues are you want to get at. Here we go. Here we come zooming into the for those of you who were there in City Hall, I'm letting you know that I got a message from Don Tollerman saying he's going to be about 15 minutes late. So I think what we'll do is think about the areas of the budget that require major discussion. We can also go over other points. So anything you think that requires review, let's put that into a list at the beginning so we can have a sense of order.
Don's gonna be late, so we can start. Sounds like you might be the only other one coming. Anybody on me? Michelle's gonna be online. Michelle's gonna be online.
How many more signatures are needed, Steve?
One.
Okay.
Not a big problem, yeah, there's one more signature. Are we waiting on Don, Rand?
Yeah, so we're just gonna think through for a minute or two before he comes what things we want to discuss. So I'd say, you know, give a general review and then look at any of the specific things. You know, we won't necessarily come to conclusions tonight, but we want to at least raise the issues that we want to put a head on tomorrow night.
Rennie, I'm probably gonna stay off camera because I have babysitting duties tonight.
Oh, come on. What's this one's name?
His name is Onwell.
Onwell?
Yes.
Well, I say if he's got anything good to say, let him at
I'll have him whisper it to me and then I'll tell you guys.
it.
No offense, but Onwell is definitely the cutest person to ever log in.
Thank you.
She said there's no open meeting, so you don't have to tell them where you're at. Right, yeah, I saw that. But this is not the meeting. She said something. Just show up at the house, to go online, that's fine. Hey, Don.
All right, good. I see Don there, so I'll call this meeting to order at 6:41 here on November 30th, 2021. Good evening, all. I have 5 clear things or things that I think we've had some discussion about that we might want to zero in on some more and see if there's information we need, see just kind of what the general lines of thought are. So the 5 items are, number 1, the capital plan, see if we're all okay with that. The second thing is computers for the Common Council. The third thing is the Chief of Staff position. Fourth thing is the CSCA pay increases. And the fifth is management confidential pay increases. Do folks have other areas that they think we should look at in some detail tonight?
Bernie, I had one thing, just to pass along.
Yes.
When the fire contract was, moved out of contingency and put into the budget as part of the recommended budget, the clothing allowance was not increased in line with the MOA, so I believe we would have to make an adjustment between contingency and the uniform allowance in the fire department. The impact would be $23,000.
Okay, so we'll add that into the committee reports for tomorrow night, or can we do that tonight?
Either or. I mean, we can cover that as part of the to-goes. Some of the to-go items that I had in terms of items that we discussed as part of the departmental budgets that you didn't mention tonight was the increase, the $50,000 for the DEC Hudson River Estuary Program grant in Parks and Rec. That was a $50,000 revenue and expense. No impact. The building department, there was a request for some additional part-time pay and zoning. And the Common Council, you just mentioned the computers and the rundown docks. We mentioned adding some money in for dock repairs.
Mm-hmm.
So those can all be part of the committee reports when we make decisions on the budget.
I'm sorry, what was that in the fire department?
It's an increase, the most recent MOA increased the uniform allowance, so we just need to adjust the budget for that. And I'd recommend just taking it from contingency.
Okay, yeah, and this that reminds me too that another area of some discussion that I've heard is project managers in various departments. So I think in general, there's a fair number of good things in the budget. I think we're all very happy that it's the same tax levy it's been for the past 6 years, I believe. I think that we're all generally in favor of increasing the salaries of our DPW, or rather our CSCA employees. I think we also definitely want to show appreciation to all the employees of the city, especially as we've been through the COVID crisis. So I think on all those scores that we've seen some good thinking in this budget. Some of the areas, though, of discussion. First, I think the dock repairs, everybody's on board with that, right? That one was, I think, going to be $10,000. Anybody got a problem with that one that we want to discuss? All right, so John, for tomorrow night, can you have a committee report for that?
Yeah, you want me to use $10,000?
I believe that was the figure we discussed, right, Tony?
Yes.
Okay. There was also the issue of the computers for the Common Council. We had some discussion about that. Any further discussion about putting some money aside for computers for the Common Council? Anybody got questions about that one? Don Tollerman?
Only that, I thought it was a good idea to give an option of phone or computer. You know, we leave it up to the person to decide what's best for them. Give them a budget rather than but that was just a.
Okay. So there's an option. Anybody else on that issue?
Only thing is, I stated before, if you give somebody a allowance, that's when people.
Yeah, same thing.
They got phone and files gotta be the one that's the program on.
I believe Steve Shabbat, didn't you have a discussion with Kyle? And there's a sense too that it's best if all members of the council have the same technology so that he can care for it. He's clear about what the software is, so on and so forth.
Well, I really didn't discuss that. I mean, I really hadn't given any thought to phones. I specifically talked to him about computers. Phones really didn't come into the conversation.
Uh-huh.
So he didn't weigh in on that.
Well, I'm talking about more about the idea would be it's best to have a consistent technology. I believe, weren't you the one who said that he would prefer to see, you know, one computer, each member of the council, it's the same one, that we would buy them in bulk so that, you know, he can make sure that they're all in order.
You want me to call him tomorrow?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'll express my concern with a phone is that a phone is very small and it's hard to read things like spreadsheets on a phone. You want to investing in phones as well, because again, I mean, a lot of our work involves texting and phone calls, so it might be a good idea to also have common council phones provided by the city. The other thing there is, you know, in essence, if we're using our own equipment, we're subsidizing the city, you know, to the extent that we're using our internet connections, we're using our software, we're using our text phone plans and so on and so forth. So, Rita?
Same problem with the phones too. I mean, we're getting emails on our phones, you know, and God forbid, you know, one of my grandkids get a hold of my phone and forward some kind of information to somebody accidentally, or me. I can do it too, but anyway, again, I don't think it's a good idea for us to be mingling our personal and city business.
Yep.
I just
Okay.
got the phone
Rita,
call.
Worthington?
I just got the phone call on Macintosh, and he says, and yes, it doesn't really matter. If someone wants a phone or a Chromebook or laptop. And so, and he said that the money's allocated in there, he's not gonna purchase all these things just in case somebody doesn't want that at once, and that money would just stay in the line. But he says it's allocated, yes, he can work with the individual council person and say, do you want a phone, do you want a laptop, Chromebook, and he can go from there.
Okay.
If somebody doesn't want anything, he'll just stay there. The money, he's not gonna go and buy nine phones and crap and laptops until he talks to each individual person to make sure they want it.
Okay.
Okay?
Rita?
Yeah, so I didn't hear everything that Tony was saying, but I just wondered when Steve talked to Kyle, did Kyle make any reference to you as to whether he thought this might be a better idea than the way that we're doing it now, or did he have an opinion about it at all?
About what? I didn't understand the question.
I said, when you spoke to Kyle about the Common Council getting computers, did he
Right.
have an opinion as to whether he thought this was a good idea or not?
Yeah, he thought it was a great idea. Yeah, he was all on board with it, to the point that, you know, I suggested like Chromebooks because they're inexpensive. He didn't like that idea. He wants us to get something. He says Chromebooks really can't be updated as technology changes. You know, he can't go into a Chromebook and update information, you know, as needed. You know, so he suggested laptops.
Okay, thanks.
And that, I mean, I guess that would be another issue with a phone. I mean, I would presume he can update phones, but, you know, I don't know. It wasn't a topic of conversation with us.
Okay. Michelle Hirsch?
The phones, he didn't want us to get
Thanks,
phones.
Rennie. So I wasn't there for the conversation about the computers, but I would imagine there's a cost savings to the city for paper because we haven't had to get the packets, right? Was that discussed at all, or we know?
Yeah, that was definitely one of the elements that we were, and also not to mention staff time and doing all the copying and renting the copier, and yes.
Right,
Yeah, good
environmental
point.
impact. Yeah. Okay, great. Thank you.
We did go into that. So that would be an offset of the cost
And then another thing, I just got off the phone with Kyle again. He says, you know, we had a conversation with Steve, he thought it was a thing, and, you know, that, you know, we're using our personal computers, he said, for instance, like Steve, and it went down, and then Kyle's got to figure out, you know, I'm allocating city time for not a city computer to fix it. Right? So he says, if these are city devices, then something goes wrong. He has, you know, he has that availability, the option to fix it. If we're using our own computers, our own cell phones, and then, you know, is he doing city time? Is he doing not city time? So that's why he says it would be better to do it this way.
Great.
That's a big, you know, he's working on our personal equipment. I don't think that's, I'm sure that's frowned upon.
Yeah.
Good point. Yeah. So did we have a numerical figure for what this might cost that we can put into the budget?
Well, don't you do
Kyle
business
said-
on your cell phone too? Don't you want a cell phone too? Don't you want a computer and a cell phone?
We need an option. We have a cell
I mean,
phone.
you do work on both, right? Don't you work on your cell phone? I mean, you do call people, people call you on your cell phone.
Yeah. I mean, I would be in favor of both, but I'd leave that up to other folks to decide.
Yeah, I didn't get a price on phone, obviously, but he said the computers that he would like to see, we can get them through the state with our contract. They're gonna be somewhere between $800 and $1,000.
Well, so maybe the thing to do is start there and then see about whether we want to get phones too at a later point, or Steve Shabbat, could you ask Kyle about the phone cost as well tomorrow?
Sure.
Or I guess, Tony, if you're talking to him right now, I don't know if he could have a figure out.
Yeah. Tony's got a hotline right to Kyle's desk.
Well, maybe get your car too.
We'll get that for your retirement, Patrick.
No, I'm saying, get your car.
You get any price on cell phones? Yeah. $40 a month for cell phones. Cell phones get free. It's a monthly service. Can you do business on it? This gives a capability. All right. So that would be free of a charge, basically it's a monthly charge, $40 a month. And Steve said that you said between computers would be anywhere from $8,000 to $1,000 a piece. All right. All right.
So we know because there's $500 in the budget right now for the council president's phone. So that would be $4,500 to add in for a phone for each of us, and up to $10,000. John, is there a way we can phrase that, or would that be money we would put aside in contingency?
So we're talking, once again, the month for phones says 480 roughly times how many? You have to add 9, right? Because we already have 1.
Yeah.
So, and then I just would need a dollar amount for the computers.
So if we put $1,000,
But, yeah.
1,000.
Yeah, I mean, whatever that is. Yeah, if that's, $10,000 or, whatever you think's adequate, I can do a committee report for that. At this point, the committee reports are just going to show the change in the spending. And then I think as we're wrapping up, we'll have to decide where to, make the adjustment on the other side. I do have some good favorable news to report. The prorated taxes were higher, the final numbers were higher than the recommended numbers. So absent any other changes, you have a little over $54,000 less of fund balance that you have to appropriate to get the same tax levy. So, you have that number to work with. Okay.
Great, okay. In that case, I think Patrick's right. We could get cars, or maybe those motor scooters. All right. All joking aside, so we're looking, yeah, so that's great to know, John.
Is the season. So as of right now, the prorated taxes are, instead of $25,000, they're actually $79,154. So there's that much more flexibility in the budget. It's $54,154.
Prorated taxes.
Right, so that at least covers, depending on how you want to do it, that at least covers the fire, uniform, and probably a couple other smaller items.
How about cars? Can we each get a car?
Yeah.
New suit?
Remember people listen, make things here. So.
Why stop here?
What's the next item?
The next thing I have is the capital plan. So as we were discussing it, I don't remember anybody registering any objections. So I just wanted to make sure that I had that correct. If there are questions we have about any of these, then it would behoove us to find out before tomorrow night's meeting.
If we need any clarification about the police department, since, or did John explain it? I know we came up after the chief was off, like I wouldn't know, deputy chief.
Yeah, we didn't get specific information about the top three things: the in-car video systems, the narcotics analyzer, the HVAC units. But we've done the police vehicles many times before, so that one I think is cut and dry. I mean, I could ask the chief to give us information about any of those other three items if you want.
Probably would be a good idea to have that information.
I called him and he's not answering. I don't got
Excuse me a second, I gotta go.
I don't got his hotline. I know about somebody who does have his hotline.
Barring that, anything else on the capital plan?
Rennie?
Yes, Michelle.
Yes, I forgot to ask DPW, that specialized snow blower that they were gonna get, if we would be
Yeah.
able to get that sooner than later, or is that gonna be something that we're gonna have to wait quite a while on?
Oh yeah, some of these things take a really long time to build.
Yeah.
Can you answer some of these questions? I got Deputy Chief Lawrence on whenever you're ready.
Oh, great.
Wait, you gonna answer Michelle's question?
Yeah, so the first one was if he could tell us what the in-car video systems are. It's $30,000 in the budget.
If-
Switch to Axon, the same company that does the body cameras,
Okay,
and contract to get the dash cameras replaced for that, so that everything syncs to one server. And actually, like if you turn on your body camera, it'll automatically turn on the dash camera, and vice versa.
so it's for dash cameras to change out to a new company,
Yep.
to a new company, that would be the same as what they have for the body.
Okay,
And then the next one is the narcotics analyzer.
Yep, it's basically it's a way to use technology to test drugs. Instead of right now, if the officers get a drug and they need to field test it, they have to, break a little piece of it off, they have to handle it, they have to put it into this packet and then physically manipulate it to try to get chemical reaction. This thing will allow us to test the drugs to see if there's actually drugs present or not without having to break it. Really, we we looked at it for years, but the big change now is with all the fentanyl, fentanyl that's out there and some of the exposures that are happening with cops around the country.
Yeah,
This will allow the guys to test the drugs safely without having to actually handle it.
okay, you hear that?
Yeah, it makes sense to me.
And then the last one's the HVAC, which I think we all know, right? That's the,
Yeah, the stock units are failed, they're no longer working.
okay.
So we're running off of the wall units right now, the rooftop ones are dead in the water, so we need to replace both of them, actually.
All righty. Any other questions?
Not for me. Anybody else? Great. All right. Thank you, Mike. You can go back to bed now.
You want to give him a call and then we talk to him?
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye. Uh-oh. That's why you reminded me to phone.
Thank you, Tony. All right. The next item that I have then is the Chief of Staff position. I can give some overview of this, or do people want to have the questions or feelings about this?
Have a thought to share on that?
I don't think he can see you there, Don.
Hey, ready?
Now we see you.
Oh, I have a thought to share on this. Which is, I think that, that this is a city with complex issues and a large workforce. And I think that the mayor will be more effective. And I think that I'm in favor of this position. I'm not sure about the best way to fund it, but I'm definitely a supporter of this job. I think that a lot of cities, the mayor does have assistants that our mayor does not. And, you know, there's so much going on, so many constituents that need to be reached out to, and so many projects that need to be managed properly. So I'm in favor of the position. I'm in favor of the position, but I think we should talk about where that budget's coming from and how is there an alternative way to finance it?
Okay. Other positions there? Questions?
Yes, Rennie?
Yes, Rita.
Let me get here. Okay. So yeah, I agree with Don that, you know, the city has a lot going on. We got a lot of projects and things like that that need managing. I'm not in favor of hiring a chief of staff for the mayor. And I know that one of his specific points was to have that person oversee the ARPA monies that will be coming in, that we've gotten rather. You know, as an alternative, you know, I would be in favor of maybe hiring a full-time grants person. I put in a full-time staffer in the grants management office to help manage this ARPA monies. You know, I think that they could use the help down there. And so I would be in favor of that as an alternative to the mayor having a chief of staff. And when he talked to us, he said it would primarily be for that person to manage those monies. So if we could put some more people in the grants management office, I think that we would be effective to be able to manage those monies.
If I could build off what Rita said, I agree with that idea. I think an advantage there is that we've got a grants department, and that's in essence what the ARPA money is. It's a form of grant. It is also going to be something that is somewhat specialized, and I've talked to a number of people in the field, and I get the feeling from them that it really will be much more like a full-time position, and that we want to hire somebody who would be at the level of maybe the grants manager, a little above, somewhere in between Ruth Ann and the grants manager, in order to find the right person for this position. Moreover, if the position is dedicated to the ARPA funds, it would be funded by the ARPA funds. So if it's formulated as a chief of staff position and only half time is put to the ARPA funds, that means that we, the city, would be paying the other half of that, that salary. Moreover, I would note that our city charter says that the Common Council has the power to make lots of changes to existing departments, but it says nothing at all about the power to create a new department. So I'd be concerned that this would flaunt our charter as it's currently written. And even if we found a way, it still says that to create a position like this, you have to have it done through the local law process. So there's an issue of process here. Moreover, looking at other cities, I only saw one city in the list of 20 that I sent y'all. Only one smaller than us has a chief of staff position. I'm not sure exactly what their structure of government was, but the mayor and the chief of staff make about the same over there. There were a couple of cities at the upper end that had something like a chief of staff position, but one of them had no salary listed for the mayor. So I'm wondering if they were calling that basically a city manager. And another one, the mayor got paid a very low salary. So it seemed pretty clear that the chief of staff position was more like city manager. So there's just not a lot of precedent in comparisons with other cities for having a position like this. The third thing is, or rather the last thing I'd bring up is that in the job description, it seems to me like a lot of that is what the mayor should be doing. The mayor, in essence, in our city is the manager, and the mayor should be the person who is running the ship, who's making sure that other department heads are doing the work, and that he's providing the foundation and the assistance that they need to get the work done. For those, and there's even other reasons, I'm not in favor of this particular position. I follow Rita's suggestion that we create a full-time position in the grants department under Ruth Ann instead of a chief of staff position. Any other comments on that?
Yeah, just to play the devil's advocate here a little bit. My understanding is this position is going to oversee a lot of the grants work and, the grants projects to move them along. I know that, I know they're short-staffed. I know there's not a lot of, enough time in the day. It seems like I used to see people here late at night working. All that being said, we do put ourselves at risk a little bit by getting these grants and not finishing the project. There's substantial penalties to be paid, for getting a grant and not fulfilling your obligation. So, anyway, I mean, that's a positive I see to this position, but I'm still not really sold on it.
Well, but Steve, your reasoning there is exactly why I'm thinking we need to have that person in the grants department. It's important to remember that the grants department manages $60 million in grants, and they've got just 2.5 people. The city budget or the city income, our city budget is $45 million. And so the comptroller has, how many people are in your office, John?
You're gonna ask me for a head count. I'm gonna have to think mentally here. It's about a dozen, including parking, but.
I mean, not all of them are involved in city management per se, right?
Yeah, most are, because we handle parking, we handle purchasing, we handle accounts payable, payroll. So, we're kind of spread out.
Sure. So it's not exactly apples to apples there, but sorry, Tony.
Remember the mayor said half of the salary is coming from the ARP money. And this ARP money has to be spent by 2026. So
it's a 5-year plan for spending the money. So it'd be, clearly a 5-year position.
Yeah, 2026.
And there's no stipulations that any part of that money has to go to this. I mean, that money could be spent elsewhere. There's nothing saying it has to go towards a chief of staff position, it can go pretty much any place the city wants, is my
Yeah.
Well, it
understanding.
wasn't the chief of staff, Steve. He was saying he was gonna dedicate this position, half of it, to this money.
Right,
So that's why we're getting funding, half funding.
yeah.
But Rennie's saying we may be able to get full funding for a grants person.
Yeah. Did I see Jeffrey Ventura Morel is here? Jeffrey, did you have your hand up?
I did. Thank you. Many of the points I was going to make were already made. Hi, everybody. I agree with Rita and Randy about the value of adding a position to the grants department instead. I mean, I know when Kristen was in the department, she had been asking for extra positions for quite a while. So I would think that would be a better use of the funds. My other question about the chief of staff position would be, unless I'm missing something, I was reading on the mayor's description of the job today. It seems like that person would be doing a lot of the functions that the mayor does right now. So basically, would the mayor then become just a figurehead? I just don't understand if that person is taking all the duties of the mayor, then what would be the mayor's job? Thank you.
Also, I have one more thought on this, and I really don't have anything I'm just kind of relying on what I recall, but since this is covered by this grant for a finite amount of time, at the end of that time, are we going to eliminate that position, or are we going to pay for it? I know we have this conversation often, and it seems like the answer is, well, that's up to you guys. You know, at the end of that 4 or 5 year, whatever the period of time is, well, that's up to you if you want to eliminate it. But it seems to me we don't have a long track record of eliminating positions that we take on. We find a way to, to keep that position in, and this is a pretty substantial position, money-wise. So do we
Right,
want
but it'd be an even longer position if it was the chief of staff. So
Yeah, but Kristen is gone and Ruth Ann took her position, so they were going to replace Ruth Ann's old position, right? So isn't this person simply replacing the assistant grants manager? So there'll be a department of 2 like there was, or is this?
no, this would be adding another full-time person in the grants department to manage the ARPA funds.
Plus, we also have another grant position that shares with you.
Right, okay, so there'd be 3.5 in that department then?
Adding another position would be 3 full-time and 2 half-time.
Right.
And also on that part, Randy, you were saying that some of the checklists, I had a chance to go through here about project managers in other departments. And I'm not sure if you saw that. You had said that was one of the things to bring up for questions, project managers in other departments. So,
We've got that. Yeah, we've got that on the list, down further on the list there, but we can bring it up now if you want to. Patrick, you had your hand up, then Michelle.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the mayor and those duties that Jeffrey was talking about, because they did sound a lot like the mayoral duties. So I know he has a full-time confidential secretary, is that correct?
Yep.
So he does have someone there to help share the burden of the.
We also got a full-time communications director.
Hang on, Randy, let me talk. A few years back, we hired a communications person who I would imagine would have taken on a lot of the work that the confidential secretary would be doing. So I would imagine it's almost like he has 2 people there to support a lot of the work that he does, the PR and those kind of things right now. Those people could also take on different duties, maybe. And then, of course, you have all the departments. Each have people. John has 12 people working for him, if the mayor said, hey, John, I need you to handle this, I mean, John should be able to designate that work to someone else, I don't see where this person is truly necessary.
Now, I think somebody made a suggestion, and I'm all for helping. I mean,
I'm sorry, Michelle was next.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Michelle?
Yeah, out of sight.
Okay, thanks, Ronnie. When we're having this discussion about having someone administer the ARPA funds, yet we don't even have a plan yet for the ARPA funds and what that is even going to look like and what the projects are going to be. And so I feel like we're putting the cart before the horse, sort of, at this point.
Well, budget-wise, we have to. That's part of the.
I know, but we don't know really day to day how much work that's going to be or what that's really going to look like.
I hear your point. The other thing is that, we could, part of it would be that if that person was in the grants department, they would be immediately available. If they weren't, working full-time in a particular month or week, they could, put that time to other grants in that department. They would be right there in the thick of what's going on with the grants department.
Right. My feeling is that I would like to see the ARPA money, be used as to going to people and helping the community, not necessarily funding larger jobs that we may not need. I'm also hoping that with, the additional project managers, things could also be more conducive in workflow between departments and the various projects and grants getting done as well. So I'm not particularly in favor of the chief of staff position.
Okay, Steve?
Well, before I cut Michelle off, that's pretty much what I was going to say. I mean, I'm all for helping the grants department. Grants have become, a real lifeline for this city. I mean, we do a lot with these grants. I'm certainly in favor of helping them out, but I think a more, something a little more practical, like another person in the department, for grants, not, somebody to oversee everything. And, it sounds like his duties might be a little diluted to actually help with the, with the grant writing and, those kind of duties.
I think if we have the funds available to hire somebody to manage this amount of money, it sounds like a good idea. Where we put them is another thing. The grants department sounds like a good idea. Could be John's department would be another good idea. Somebody could run, of course, a financial, that kind of thing out of John's office. I know he doesn't have another seat in there. No space. No space.
Yeah, can we use ARPA funds to build a new office onto the city hall? All right, anything else on that? Anybody wants to say?
I would like this to discuss this other project manager that you said you had. While we're talking about project manager, I don't want to go way down and then we start talking about another project manager. So I was trying to figure out where this project manager is that you were talking about.
You mean the one that we're talking, the potentially a new one in the grants department? Is that what you're referring to, or are you referring to the other project managers?
Yeah, you said earlier that was other departments at project managers, and I can't recall where other departments at project managers.
Oh, yeah, so for example, there's a proposed one in Parks and Rec, right, to do the Deet Stadium stuff, for example.
All right. So that is the case. I mean, I'm not sure where that person's going to be seated. If we think that it'd be project managers will all try to be in the same place, all right? And so they can bump off each other's heads with, suggestions or questions. And if it's some downtime or something, they can help out with another project. But we haven't spread out around the city. That's going to, that's hard. And so,
It's true, but there is cooperation. So, for example, if some of the ARPA funds were going to be used for something that was more related to infrastructure, then most likely what would happen is Ruth Ann's department would run the that particular part of the grant through the design phase, but once it gets to the building phase, they would move it over to the engineering department. So, you know, there's definitely cooperation there, and that's, again, some of this is trying to figure out what's the best way to facilitate that cooperation, whether it's to have all grants related people in one office, or, you know, some spreading out so that they're in different departments with particular expertise, like engineering.
Like you said, it's hard with this, the structure of City Hall to have everybody in one location. And like, it does seem like we would have a a substantial number, not substantial, but a number of project managers. And that would be working for the city now. And they're going to be able to work on different projects if needed, if they're slowed down with something. Like you said, instead of a chief of staff there, what we're going to do after 5 years. Where project managers, we're always going to have these long-term projects or grants that we can use people on. And make that department, or make that department run smoother. So then you're not seeing what's going on with this grant, right? So, because, you know, we're going to continue to have grant projects coming up. We always do. There's always going to be another project that's going to be a grant. It's got to be done by a certain time, and you got to follow a lot of things and their expertise on it. We don't want to stretch it out.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else on that score?
We can hire labor for the Department of Public Works.
All right, so are y'all ready to move on to the CSEA pay increase issue?
What is it?
CSEA pay increase proposal. Any comments on that one?
Sorry, Rennie, what was this one?
CSEA, the proposal to increase pay for all of our CSEA workers.
Oh, okay, okay.
We do have one proposal on the table to, well, let me say, so I've looked at this in a number of different ways, and we can throw this out. We've talked with John about it. So we've got a number of options here. One is that we pass the proposal as laid out and all the increases go forward with no changes whatsoever. Another would be that we don't pass it at all. I think everybody here, though, is in favor of some kind of increase in the pay for particularly our lowest salaried, lowest paid CSEA workers. We looked at the option too of taking the money, instead of putting it into raises at the beginning of the year, put that money into contingency so that it would be there as part of the negotiations with the CSEA union leadership. The contract with CSEA is expired, and they need to be entering into negotiations here very soon. That has some advantage in the sense that the proper place, from my understanding of union negotiations, for the discussion of that sort of change would be in negotiations, the formal negotiations that would have city officials meeting with union officials. That's not what we've got here. This is a plan that was created by the mayor in consultation with the president of the CSEA union. Another option that we looked at was the potential, well, that one has the downside of if we put that money into contingency, it would be a real wrenching feeling for a lot of our CSEA employees who, you know, in a sense, they've gotten a promise, or at least a proposal from the mayor, that they're going to see their salaries increase significantly at the beginning of the year. And in a sense, it would feel like we were pulling the rug out from underneath them if we put it all into contingency. We looked at the potential, I spoke with John about the potential for maybe going halvesies, and taking half. It's a roughly $700,000 figure that we're looking at. So another option would be to take $350,000 and put that toward an increase, an immediate increase in January for the CSEA employees, and the other half in contingency for part of the contract negotiations. But as John looked at it more closely, it started to get pretty complicated because of all the steps and grades, and you would end up with positions that still were out of joint with each other, that would not be getting, the people in the same position might not be getting the same pay. So I think that 50% raise, 50% in contingency plan probably isn't workable. John, you can tell me if you've had another thought about that. Otherwise, another possibility, I suppose, would be simply an across the board, everybody gets a 5% increase. And then last of all, one of the things that we've discussed is the possibility of keeping.
Randy, what was that? That was a blanket 5%?
Yeah, and I'm not sure that that would work. I haven't discussed that with John, but that's an idea that some people have proposed. So instead of, the variations, the problem there again is if you do a blanket 5%, somebody's got to go in and figure that out for each employee. And so, but then the last item here would be we keep the basic proposal for now that's before us, that the mayor gave us. But in order to make it more equitable, particularly for those people who have been longtime employees of the city, we would increase longevity pay, which needs to be done anyway. I see in the letter from Dan Quesnell that this is one of the things that they're concerned with in their contract negotiations. And this would have the effect of balancing out the issue of long-term work for the city with more recent people who, some of whom will see significant increases without having been here even for a year. So those are some possibilities. I don't know where any of you stand on any of it. Any response here? Don?
Myself, also.
And Tony? Okay.
Let me excuse myself for any of these conversations, in particular, because of my.
Oh, I see. Okay, I see what you're saying. You're recusing yourself in this particular one? Okay. All right. Don Tollerman?
So I'll start out by saying that this is complicated stuff, and it's taking a whole system and turning it on its head, and what the mayor presented may be good, or I don't feel that I have enough knowledge and background to really judge it. And so I like the idea of putting it into the contract negotiations that are coming up. And so that these things can be thoroughly thought through and discussed by people who are in the middle of it and on both sides, the city and the union. However, I think that we should, convey to employees that they are valued and we want them to feel valued. And, maybe the 5% is problematic, but maybe a 2.5% as a show of good faith that, and there's, hopefully there'll be more coming, but maybe a 2.5% across the board bonus, and let everybody know why we're doing it, and that the rest will be just, reviewed and discussed during negotiations.
Before we go down that particular path of an across the board increase, John, can you weigh in on whether that's feasible or what the potential of it is?
In terms of what? In terms.
I think how complicated it would be to give everybody 3%.
Well, once again, I mean, whatever you do, you're moving money around in the budget. There still has to be an MOA, is my understanding, between the union and the city. So, if the council moves money in the budget to provide for a 3% immediate increase for CSCA employees, an MOA would have to be executed, and the union would have to agree to that. And, you know, I think there would need to be direction from the council to whoever's negotiating that as to what their intent was. Is the intent to provide for a 3% increase with, you know, does that?
Down payment.
The down payment, well, right, so, but I think it goes beyond that. You know, you have the issue of retro, no retro, you have the issue of, you know, give backs, no give backs. You know, what, you know, the mayor has in his budget is, you know, this proposal, he pulled the money out of the contingency for retro. So in his proposal, you know, this would only go through or would go through if there was no retro. So some of that would have to be ferreted out.
And John, if we approve these increases in pay, that doesn't necessarily mean that this would make the structure that the mayor has proposed the final structure. Wouldn't that be subject to negotiation in the contract bargaining that's coming up?
You're talking about if you move forward with what's in the budget as it stands?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you're just providing the funding to be able for the negotiating team to negotiate an MOA with terms that would be similar to what's in the budget, right? So there still would have to be a negotiation to get there. You know, ultimately there could be issues on the union side, things that they see with the proposal that they like or don't like. There may be some things on the city's negotiating team that, you know, we like or don't like. So, but what it provides for is maybe a framework for the negotiating team to work with.
Okay. Well, I will state that I'm extremely uncomfortable with the mayor making this proposal. I'm fully in accord with increasing the pay for CSCA workers, but by doing it in this structure that suggests a complete change of the pay structure from the 18 grades and 6 steps per grade. I'm not saying that's the best way, but it just seems like to me it's a de facto negotiation that undermines the later bona fide negotiation. That said, I'm comforted by what you're saying, that we're basically talking about just what's the money that we're making available to CSCA for pay increases. So I think that helps us think this through some. And, you know, so let me ask you, all of you, what do you think about the idea of increasing the longevity pay as a way of making this more equitable, so that we've got not just the increase in pay, but we've also, in a sense, an expression of our appreciation for our longtime employees. Because this is where I've heard most of the concern from folks, I think, is long-term employees are feeling like they've been slighted in this change.
I think it's a good idea to increase longevity pay. But you mean just by itself for now and negotiate the rest? So you're suggesting?
Well, one option is if we keep the basic pay changes that the mayor has proposed, it creates some very distinct differentials. And one of the main lines of differential is between short-term and long-term employees. So the equity, I mean, the longevity pay, while it's not added to base, it would compensate those long-term employees in a significant way that would, to some degree, offset the increase in salary of the newer and lower paid workers.
So this is going to be on top of the 700,000. So this proposal may be an $800,000 proposal now.
Right, because if I understand the numbers that we looked at, the ones I sent out today, I think the cost of the longevity pay would be in the neighborhood of $100,000. Michelle Hirsch?
So we haven't allocated in contingency at all for longevity since it hasn't been negotiated yet? I mean, it sounds like it's
Correct.
supposed to be negotiated, so.
Mhm.
So why wasn't that put in then, knowing that's coming?
Well, we don't know when the contract will actually be.
Okay, and then also about, the other management positions, like the mayor said that once he has the CSEA contract, that all of that is worked out, then he'll know what percentage raises that all the other, management would get. So is that going to be put into contingency as well, or no?
Well, we'll get to there's a whole series of issues
Yeah.
with those raises too. So I think we'll hold those separate, but the answer there
Okay.
is they have not been placed in contingency yet. And that's one of the things for us to consider. Rita, did you have some? I'm sorry, were you done, Michelle?
Yeah, I just, my understanding is that if we weren't collapsing the steps, that the amount of money that we would have to put aside for everyone to then get raises would be much significantly higher than the 750. So.
Mhm. Okay. Rita?
Oh, I was just going to say I agree with the longevity part of it should be negotiated as well. I think money should be put away for that, and those amounts should be lifted as the years go by. So I'm in favor of doing that.
I'm sorry, can I clarify? Are you in favor of giving the longevity pay increase with the salary proposal, with the pay increase proposal the mayor's making? Are you saying simply to put some money aside in contingency for a future increase that would be negotiated in the bargaining?
The latter. Yep.
Okay. Steve Shabbat?
Yeah, just a couple comments. I mean, I know I'm probably going to show my age here, but, I've worked in both civil service and private, and I can't recall a lot of instances. It's not that I'm against this, this plan per se. Nobody's ever, come in and started at the same level as somebody who's been working there. It is kind of a new idea, and I think as we're alluding to here, that long-term employees are going to feel a little slighted. So I think we really have to, come up with something to satisfy them too. I mean, I would feel more comfortable, allocating the money, putting in a contingency, and negotiate this stuff. I mean, I think if we approve it as it is, we're pretty much saying we agree, and that's going to be a strong argument. I would rather see negotiations take place with the money set aside, for the outcome of it.
It seems to me that would be the standard operating procedure. That's what it seems like to me. But, at the same time, my heart goes out to those members of CSEA who now feel like they can expect a pay increase. So that's where the rub is for me.
Well, I think if we set the money aside to be used for negotiations, we're not closing the door on anybody. The door is going to be open. Those things would have to be negotiated.
Mm-hmm.
The only problem though is there has never in the history of the city of Kingston been such a large increase in a negotiation for the bottom people, right? For the bottom earners. This is a 20 some odd, a 20% raise or almost close. That just doesn't happen during negotiations. So what happens then during negotiations? You know, we have to think like what we're trying to do here with this money, the mayor's proposing, may not get done during a negotiation.
Well, you know, we have some power there. We can direct the negotiators to, you know, in terms of, we can let the mayor and his team know what our interests are, what our preferences are here. You know, it's just at this point, this whole proposal is really the product of two people. And so that's a reason to be leery of it, because the reason you go into contract negotiations is so that folks who are deeply involved, deeply invested, literally and figuratively, in the process can look at this closely and really think it through. So, you know, the way that this works now, you have some things that I don't feel like make a lot of sense. So, for example, a cleaner in our current format is an entry-level position at grade 1. A janitor in the current position is at grade level 3, and a maintenance helper is at grade 5. But the new schedule has combined all three of those titles into one grade with no room for advancement. So right now, you know, the way that a cleaner could improve his or their salary would be by applying for the janitor job, and that would move them up the grades. Same then for the janitor, could move up to maintenance helper. But if all of those are put into one grade, that means that you've got a lot of people who have a job and which they are never going to get an increase in salary beyond the annual cost of living increase, 2% or so, and any longevity pay. So, you know, that's, and I don't know if that's the best thing or not, but I do know that it probably bears a lot more investigation.
I agree with you.
100% agree.
All right, so, well, we're not going to come to a final decision tonight, but I want everybody to try to think that through, because it is complicated, and it's also difficult. So, any other discussion on that point right now? I mean, on the CSEA pay increase point? Okay, then the next is the management confidential pay increases. So we've seen different justifications for this. I want to point out that there are a number of issues here before we go on. Some people got significant increases, some got no increases. The question, though, is related to the CSEA issue, because the management handbook, which the council adopted and the mayor signed, which was the product of discussions between management confidential employees and the mayor, has two different types of increase that it discusses. There are retention increases and there are wage increases. So wage increases are pinned to CSEA increases. So if we increase CSEA pay right now, there's a big question about whether or not we are then required to correlatively increase the salaries, the pay increase of all of our management confidential employees. So then it'd be hard to figure what that increase might be, because I think there's an average increase in CSEA wages of around 11%. So that might mean we have to increase all of our management confidential employees at 11-something%. There are also retention increases, and so this gets sticky because one of the reasons that the mayor gave for increasing CSEA salaries was retention. But in the management handbook, retention increases are pinned to evaluations and external peers and are capped at 1.5%. So, you know, this is something that we've got to think through. Whether what we're doing for CSEA is a wage increase or a retention increase, and it's going to depend a lot on how the mayor has justified the CSEA increases. So I don't know if that puts us in any kind of legal jeopardy in the sense of if we don't give somebody a raise, they could then file suit for unfair practice for not following the management handbook. So that's one issue to take into consideration there. The other is that I've now spoken with many department heads, and I keep hearing phrases like, we feel duped, we feel slapped in the face. There's a real strong sense among quite a number of department heads that these proposed increases for some people are arbitrary and capricious. So I'll give you an example. The director of communications is seeing a significant increase, but I don't know that that department has had a significant increase in job duties. We've seen a significant increase in the salary of the director of Parks and Recreation, who's now under the new proposal, in a sense, has received this money already because of new job duties added, but would be making the same amount of money as the previous director who had dozens of years of experience. So, you know, those are some of the things to take in consideration. I don't know where you fall on those. Any further discussion there?
Only thing I would like to try is that we need to look at that management book. And I mean, I know it came up several times in it that it doesn't say anything about rent. And I looked at this. So we have to change the verbiage on there or amend the verbiage that, and I'm trying to find it where it's in here, Rennie, in this thing that you sent where it talks about evaluations.
Yeah, it's the bottom of page 7.
I'm on page 7, I don't see it. I see employee must be employed for at least 12 vacation time, timekeeping increases.
Yeah, so the first paragraph is the one that I mentioned that talks about any other type of wage increase.
Okay.
Shall receive commensurate increases forthwith. So that means if CSEA sees these increases, then management should get the same, and they should be commensurate, and they should happen at the same time. And then the second type is the retention increase. And that's the one where anybody who's being paid extra in order to retain them has to be, that decision has to be supported by these two criteria. One is annual evaluations conducted in July and a comparison with their peers in other similarly sized cities.
All right. So that part, that first bullet needs to be amended. Most recent annual evaluation, most recent written annual or performance annual written evaluation. Both parties will receive a copy of this evaluation. That's not stated, and that's why the mayor says it doesn't say anything about it has to be written. That should be amended. I don't know where we amended, or when we go on the floor, but that should be included in most recent performance and annual evaluation, or most recent performance written annual evaluation conducted in July. Both parties will receive a copy of this evaluation.
I totally agree. If you want to, if you wouldn't mind writing that up as a communication, I think that's a great idea. But I've spoken with a number of people who work in these types of positions, And the idea that there would not be a written annual a written annual evaluation is just, they're shocked that this is not an annual practice that's done with each of the department heads. So that being the case, we're still, this is the question, the two types of increase mentioned here, and what that says to us about whether to make any of these increases or whether to increase all of the department heads by a certain percentage. We could do that, make sure that everyone gets at least X amount of an increase. And I think, given what we've gone through in COVID, I think that an increase is certainly one that's commensurate with CSDA makes sense to me. So I don't know, what do y'all think? Steve Shabbat?
Yeah, I'm certainly, I have to agree that, I think a lot of these raises were handed out arbitrarily. And I think during our budget meetings, we have asked almost everyone that has either gotten a raise, a substantial raise, or any kind of raise, or didn't, if they received any kind of notice why, or a reason why they either got a raise or they didn't get a raise. And I don't think there was anyone that said, yeah, this is why I got this raise. It seemed like everybody said, no, I don't know. So, that kind of lack of, I don't even know what to call it, and I think probably a lot of us here, if not everybody, we've all done evaluations, and again, not to beat this to death, but I've done it in, a civil service environment and a private environment. And you always had to have a written evaluation, and that person sitting across the table had to be aware that this was an evaluation, not a conversation, not a, every 2 weeks sit down, and talk about what's going on in your department. I mean, they have to be really aware that this is going to be their evaluation. And this doesn't seem like it was done. So, and some people have gotten what substantial is the only thing I can say. I mean, I've certainly haven't gotten raises like that any time in my career. This is, people have received a lot of money and we're not quite sure why. They're not quite sure why. And some people have gotten nothing and they don't know why they got nothing. And probably like everybody else, I've heard numerous complaints about this, that people are highly unsatisfied. And like you said, it's not the case that, somebody would get a 30% raise and I got nothing, or I got, a 5% raise, or, whatever. So it has created a lot of animosity. I'm sure everybody hears it. So yeah, I certainly would be on board with, addressing that in some form, whether it's an across the board raise, but, we're talking even a 10% raise. I've never gotten a 10% raise in my life, unless you took a new job. But to stay in your position and get a 10% raise, that's unheard of, and I'm not even saying I'm opposed to it, but it's, highly unusual.
Pat O'Reilly, then Don Tollerman.
Well, there has been a problem. What the CSEA has negotiated hasn't kept up with inflation. So now we have a problem, which is these people are now underpaid. They didn't get enough in their contracts. They didn't get enough money to keep up with inflation. So now we can't hire anybody because our jobs aren't paying enough, right? We're not paying enough, so we're not getting qualified workers. We're not getting people to even apply for the jobs. we're getting people actually leaving the city, right, workforce to go elsewhere because we haven't kept up with, we haven't paid them enough, basically. So think about this. We put this money into contingency and we say, okay, this is what we want to do with this money. This money, we want this money to be earmarked for raises, $700,000. If we do the other thing, it's $800,000 to get the longevity pay, which makes everybody a little happier, okay? So $800,000 we put into, now, negotiations can go on for years. So these people, right now, we're having a little crisis. We can't hire people. People are leaving the city. We're not paying them enough. And we throw this money back into contingency, and we may not be able to pay them for years coming forward. And that's going to put our city in a bad spot too. So we have a kind of spot here we're in. Like, we need to do something for these people and help them get a living wage, right? And we can't not give them something for the next 3 years while we negotiate the next contract.
All right, so that was about CSEA, right, Pat?
Yes, I'm sorry, yes. No, that's not.
Are you gonna?
It's tied, the management is tied to the CSEA, so yes, for everybody, it's not everybody.
Okay, I see the connection. All right, thanks. Don Tollerman?
What Patrick described as true, that these negotiations can take years, then that is terrible. I don't know if that's true or not, if it's, but you can't leave these people hanging, because we are losing good people even to the county, you know? DPW is losing people and everyone. So, you know, what about, you know, what about I don't know, if was management, did they withhold their raises last year because of COVID? I know CSA did not, but did management? Was that?
They're tied in.
They're tied in. So I mean, but management's a separate thing. So, you know, what about something like a blanket 5% to management, or at least those who didn't get raises? Give those who didn't get raises in the mayor's budget a blanket 5%.
Let's clarify first. John, did anybody not get raises during the COVID crisis?
Well, the management followed the CSCA raises, right? So basically 2020, other than we mentioned an employee who got a raise earlier this year in management, but by and large, management did not get an increase since 1/1/2020, the last time CSCA got increases. The CSCA contract expired December 31st, 2020. That was I believe it was a 4-year contract. At the time that contract was passed, there was also a resolution passed to provide for similar raises for the management. So that expired December 31st, 2020. You get into 2021, and most management have not received increases, nor have CSEA.
So that's good information. I don't, you know, if we don't pay our people, our city, everybody's hurt, you know, and looking at the numbers, Rennie, that you gave us that compares some of our compensation with our you know, sister cities, we're really way below average. And I just think it's criminal for people who work so hard and just, you know, have to take less money and decide, well, maybe I need to leave the city. We need to do something now, I think, to show our support for these people.
Mm-hmm. Rita Worthington?
Yes, Don, I agree 100% with you. I just wanted to be fair. I wanted to, you know, we have other workers other than CSEA workers, and they have also worked hard, and they also need to, they need raises as well. You know, I just, you know, you know, as Rennie said, I feel like it's going to cause a lot of issues and a demoralizing environment if some of our workers receive a raise and others don't. who have worked equally as hard. So I think we're all saying that all of our workers deserve a raise, absolutely, 100%. We just need to figure out what that raise will be and how we're going to satisfy all of our city workers.
Okay, so should we separate the management versus the CSEA because the negotiations are coming up? And just talk about how giving management a raise now and waiting for negotiations? Or is Patrick right that this could take 3 years for the union negotiations, and that's just a kick in the head to those workers?
John Toohey, do you have a sense of how long CSEA negotiations have lasted in the past? Not that that's a clear predictor of the future, but just a sense.
Any negotiation, most negotiations that we've been in take time. If assuming you're starting from, a blank slate and, you're exchanging ideas, typically I would say the shortest time frame is about 6 months.
So it could easily be a year.
It really does depend on,
Okay.
For example, right now, our police contract expired December 31st, 2019. We just, council recently adopted a contract for the firefighters that began the period 1/1/2020. Was that right? Yes. So that's for 2021 and beyond. So there's a lot of factors in play, but I would say the shortest time frame for a normal negotiation from start to finish would be approximately 6 months. It just really depends upon, how many issues are involved on both sides. Are there operational issues that are at stake?
So if John is saying shortest is 6 months, I think that I'm hearing, that means it could be easily a year. And that's not fair.
That you would have to separate these two, that I can chime in then. Right, because management is tied to CSAA, that their contract, whatever.
Yeah, you can talk. Yeah, I'm perfectly fine.
Whatever CSA gets, management's gonna get. But management also has this other piece, only management and confidential, that they get from 0 to 1.5% every January, starting out January to 2020. So that's different than what the rank and file CSA employees get. This retention, this addition, that's an addition for management and confidential workers.
They could possibly get that if they have a good review.
Correct. Which is now what the question was ready. Those reviews were supposed to be done each year commencing on January 1st, 2020. So they were supposed to have gotten an evaluation, and I'm assuming it's by the mayor, or somebody will decide on each employee's increase based upon his or her overall consideration, which is part of that consideration is the annual evaluation. So management and confidential.
Are we talking about only management there? Only department heads?
Well, that's management. I don't know what falls under management.
Whoever's covered in a handbook, it's mainly department heads. There's a couple of non-department heads, your DPW deputy superintendent, your executive confidential secretary in corp counsel's office is part of this. I might be missing, the mayor's secretary. They're part of that as well. But whoever, the positions are actually listed in the handbook.
So then you don't say we're going to get them 1.5%, which is what they can only get up to. It's part of the retention, 1.5% increase. And then everything else is tied to negotiations. That is only where management falls in, and they have that retention that they can get an increase starting this January.
That's the only way management can get raised.
CESA employees can't, unless you're giving this bump that the mayor suggested, but if you're gonna put in retention, then you have to wait for contract negotiation before they can.
You want me to answer? Patrick asked me a question. My understanding of the management handbook is that essentially provides for raises similar to in line with the CSCA, plus a retention increase up to the 1.5%, which is based upon evaluation, and basically a comparison of where that position stands in relation to, its peers. I believe internal, external. I would have to look at the policy, but that was the incentive to be management, right? Is that you'd get the CSCA increase, plus you'd have the potential to receive an additional.
And when did that go into our contract? When did that go into the handbook?
That was part of the original adopted handbook that was, I have 2019, I don't have the exact date it was adopted, but, let me see. Adopted by resolution number 6 of 2019, January 8th, 2019.
Okay, has anybody received a increase
Or it didn't go into effect until
since 2019?
No, 2020 was the first.
Without 2020, when that
Yeah.
1.5% came into effect?
Yeah.
Has anybody received one of those increases?
I'm not aware of anyone getting an increase that was clearly denoted as that.
Thank you.
The people that fall in there are secretary, mayor, city assessor, city clerk, corp counsel, assistant corp counsel, confidential secretary, corp counsel, executive secretary, civil service commission, city engineer, planner, human relations director, recreation director, superintendent of public works, deputy superintendent of public works, director of IT, deep manager, which is gone now, deep secretary, which is no longer there, director of communications and community engagement, executive director of KLDC, executive director of economic development, building, director of building safety and zoning, and I think it's director of cultural affairs, director of health and wellness, or eligible underneath that retention, if that's what's on the bottom, so those the titles.
And just for clarification, the comparison of compensation is to external peers. I think at one point there was a discussion of internal, but the policy reads external peers.
Right. Yeah.
A comparison of similar sized cities.
Correct.
Similar
Yeah,
sized.
that's, you can look at the NICOM list that I sent out. So, for example, city clerk, here in Kingston, our city clerk gets paid $58,000. Peekskill, which is roughly comparable to us in population, they pay their city clerk $90,000. Middletown, the next town up, $78,000. So, of the 10 cities above us, only one, or the 8 cities above us rather, only one comes in at the same rate as we do. So, depending on how you stack the various different salaries there, our city clerk is underpaid in that peer review. So again, that's one of the things you would look at in terms of trying to consider the retention increase. The question, though, here, or the other question, has to do with wage increase. So if we're increasing CSCA, it's suggesting that we have to also increase our management confidential. And there's an assumption in the management handbook that any CSCA increase would be due to contract negotiations, because it doesn't seem to contemplate the sort of change that we're looking at now, where there's a lot of different rates change within CSCA pay scales. So that's its own can of worms, trying to figure out whether we need to make that increase, and so what would be the right one.
So Reddy, over the last 4 years, if that city clerk had gotten the 1.5% raise, our city clerk would be about $4,000, pay would be about $4,000 more. If they got those, if she had gotten the 1.5% raises for the last 4 years, and it would be a much more competitive job.
Yeah,
That's
retention increase, yeah.
Just for clarification, the handbook stated, the beginning period of the retention increase would have been January 1, 2020.
Last year. It was only-
So last year.
Last year, this year.
Oh, well.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, the point's well taken, you know, but
A good thought, though.
$900 better. Right?
do you teach math or something?
I gotta guess, that's all, I'm a guesser.
Okay, so, you know, I think we've laid out the various issues here, plans. I don't know if we're gonna have consensus tonight, but we're gonna have to come to an agreement tomorrow, or at least a majority of us has to come to an agreement tomorrow. So be ready for that. And it'd be great if, well, whatever.
We need to have options. What are we gonna agree on what? Do we have
Tomorrow's the wrap.
I know, but for this issue, how do we agree on anything? What do we?
You don't, you say that I don't vote for the, you say I vote the budget down, I say no.
Well, it's not just us, you get the whole common council.
So if we vote the budget
No,
down,
no,
then
no,
what?
no.
Now, we can make changes to it.
But I mean, this whole raise issue, what happens if we don't come to an agreement on that? Then what happens? Nobody
Well,
gets,
somebody makes a proposal and then we debate that proposal. You know, and so that's why I want, you know, it'd be great if each of us was pretty clear on where we stood, so that instead of having the long discussion, we could say, okay, we laid out the options last night. Here they are, 1, 2, 3. And we choose this one, or a majority of us at least chooses number 3.
so who's gonna lay out the 1, 2, 3?
Discussion to me.
Yeah, it's just like, what we vote on tomorrow, it's finance, it's not the final score. It's gonna have to go to the council.
I know, but who's gonna lay this out? Randy just said he's gonna, we'll have the choices.
Ready to make the finance, so he's gonna have to lay it out, these are options, and then you guys have to have a discussion.
If we agree with the options, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's just
I
like,
don't file,
two
you know,
people on the finance, 2 people could be for it, 3 people could be against it. It still gets that way, it gets to the full council
I know,
next week.
I know, but this is such complicated stuff. His 3 options may or may not make sense, because each option will have other implications.
Doesn't the mayor get another shot at reconfiguring his numbers and giving it back to us?
no, because we are required to get this done by the December council meeting. So that the mayor can sign it before the next fiscal year.
The same, you could have options, we're gonna have discussions when we did, we're just gonna have to finally say it. Somebody's gonna have to put a motion, somebody seconds it, it's discussion, and then all in favor or not.
You just, preferably, we don't run into a situation where we have changes on the floor.
Yeah.
You know, especially of any complex magnitude, because then you might not be able to calculate them at that time. So it'd be preferable to walk away from tomorrow night's meeting with a consensus on the changes.
All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I see
Yeah,
that
so for
all
example,
the choices that Randy's gonna work up, you're gonna talk to him, right?
Oh, it's
Make it make sense.
contingent, or.
If we were gonna, if I were gonna lay out the CSEA issue, here's what I would do. I would say, I think there are 2 feasible options. One, follow the mayor's basic plan, but add longevity. That would then require us to find the $100,000 in the budget, either by, you know, getting rid of some other stuff or taking it from I guess, fund balance. Sorry if that gave you a heart attack, John. Or the other option would be to put the $700,000 into contingency. You know, that to me seems like the 2 most viable options. So, you know, if you want.
What, and then have union negotiations subsequently?
Yeah.
Yeah, so those would be the 2 options, and we could debate those 2 options. You know, I mean, I can try to lay those out specifically. I don't know what success I'll have by tomorrow night, but
Isn't the contingency fund like a general fund that can be used for anything?
Yeah, but this is how we often approach it, where if we know that a contract is going to be, if we know that a contract is likely to be finalized in a particular year, we put money to the side in contingency. So we had some money that was rolling over for a couple of years. I think wasn't it the KPD contract, John?
I'm sorry, what's the question, Randy, regarding the KPD?
Just that when we've had contracts that were long expired, we put money into contingency each year to cover a potential cover back pay.
That's correct. There's some estimate that's, approximate to what we think our exposure might be.
Yeah, so Patrick, that's not unusual for us to do.
Do something similar to that with this?
Yeah, I mean, a council could put, an amount into contingency.
But then the new council could come in, because since we have new members coming in, and say, you know what, we don't want to use it for that.
Yeah, that can always happen, but it doesn't.
Correct, and when they solve, when the contract is solved, or negotiated, we gotta have the money, right? Contract eventually gonna get solved, it's gotta be money somewhere, the money's gotta be.
I understand that, but the contract might be another 1%, and we leave these people exactly where they are, beating them to death.
Yeah, but we have some say in that, Patrick. We can let the mayor know. We can let John Toohey know before the negotiations. Here's the kind of thing that we're looking for, and our approval of the contract is based on something that looks along these lines. Because remember, we do have to approve all contracts, union contracts, I mean.
So in my time here, it's usually the contracts are negotiated basically behind closed doors with a team of people from the city, team of people from the union. We really have nothing to do with it. At the end of the negotiation, they bring the contract to us and we say yes or no. I don't remember being involved in any contract discussions like that where we're saying we would like to give you guys this much money. I don't think we've ever done that in my time here.
You're right, and I don't remember that either, but the point is that if we put $700,000 into contingency and let the negotiators know, we'd like you to consider using up to this amount to increase various salaries, various pay in CSEA, then they know that they should use that money. If they come back and they only use $50,000 of it, we can say, no, we don't approve the contract.
Well, that's a promise that, or a kind of promissory that this council's making. You got 4 more people coming in here, 4 new people coming in here who might not want that, and might have one road that might go with it. Then you got 5.
Yep.
That's part of the union.
Right. So what I'm saying is we either we do something right now, or it could be left up to the wind. Who knows?
That's part of the calculus here, absolutely.
We get the big bucks, man.
Well, that's a stressful part of the job, right?
Okay, so what I will try on these issues to lay out a couple of options. I can't guarantee that I'm going to have any detail in them. And I'll try to remember what we've talked about. But so basically, if you can try to think through the issues we're talking about, so that instead of us trying to, figure out the issue tomorrow night, we can kind of look at the options and say yes to this one, no to that one. And then we can vote.
I think we're paying, across the board, maybe like 10, on average, increases of 10 to maybe 13% on average. We average all the raises. Is that about correct?
I think it's 11.5%, isn't it, John? Isn't that the average?
Yeah, I believe that's.
So let's say could you also, in your calculations, think about giving everybody an 11.5% raise, every single person? you know, just for another, just for a comparison to putting it in contingency and or adopting it and having the longevity wages too. I know it's a complicated mathematical thing to do, but
Which 11.5%, where's that from?
11.5% is the average raise that we're giving to the CSE employees. So if every CSEA employee got equal amount, they would get 11.5%. So can that be one of your suggestions? Not suggestions, but one of the things you analyze and come to us with?
Well, John, do you have anything to say about that right off the bat? I mean, because I don't know how feasible that is.
Well, I think with any of these grand, you know, we're talking kind of, you know, 5,000 foot calculations. They're all going to have to be estimates with an offset from a, you know, like a contingency or a fund balance, because something like this, we wouldn't have an exact number for the budget, but if it's a zero impact on the budget, that whatever, you know, whatever the change is, like Randy mentioned, like the longevity, we won't have an exact number, but if it's known that you're increasing one item, you're going to decrease the other as part of that committee report by the same amount, has a zero impact. So 11.5%, if you did a flat increase of the budgeted raises, or not the budgeted raises, of the existing salary schedules, you basically would you'd be keeping the existing salary schedule structure intact, and you would be just increasing percentage-wise each of the positions by that amount.
That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so you know, essentially, could you do that in the budget? Yes, you could. Could you do it where it was a similar amount to what's there now? Yes. You know, will it take my department time to, you know, eventually get the printed budget out? Yes.
So I think that's a viable solution, not solution, but it's a viable option, and we get these people money now.
Then they would start with a contract. Negotiate.
Then the next contract comes up, they negotiate the next contract. But if the mayor's saying, hey, he wants to give these people a raise, we're all saying we want to give these people a raise. Maybe this is the way to do it until the negotiations, and then they can start to pick it apart. I don't know. I mean, we're not negotiators, we're legislators.
Well, if the council had money, that 11.5% increase for each position in the budget, that would, as I mentioned before, that would provide the allocation for the negotiating committee to negotiate an MOA to that effect immediately for at least that immediate time frame, right? And then I think you would still need a long-term obviously you still need a long-term successor contract to the contract that expired December 31st, 2020.
I hear you.
Right, but that would
give everybody some money. And everybody would be, I think everybody would feel a little happier about, you know, everybody would be getting, I know the problem with that is the people who are making $40,000 are only getting 11% of that. And the people making $100,000 are getting 11% of that. I understand that there, it doesn't work, but remember, the department heads are supposed to be handling more responsibility than someone at, you know, and their raises, of course, will be bigger because they are at that end of the spectrum, you know. I don't see that big a problem with giving someone at the top 10% or at the bottom 10%. I don't see a problem with that. I think it's kind of, as a matter of fact, it sounds pretty fair in a lot of ways. I mean, some of these other things don't seem fair at all.
John, would it be too difficult to run to figure out if we have a $700,000 amount, what the right percentage would be? Because I'm wondering, is 11.5%, does that really work out with the number of employees that we have in CSEA?
Well, I think the number, I will go back and check. but I do believe the number that you were using, that number was based upon actual occupied positions. So that would approximate, if you were to do a flat percentage across the board, the number that you put out there, 11%, whatever that number is, would approximate the same financial impact of what the salary schedule
Well,
is
you
now.
probably want to make it.
It's in a budget. The difference is you're spreading it out differently. You're not, the mayor's proposal has more money to the, the lower level positions. This would allocate it percentage-wise evenly across.
Right.
But once again, a negotiation still has to happen. Regardless, right? So.
Regardless, it has to go to a memorandum of agreement. Is that what you're talking about?
Yep.
So when he says MOA, he's talking about a memorandum of agreement, which means that the union has to agree to this thing. So whatever we propose to them, if we say, hey, the only thing that they don't have to agree to, of course, if we don't give them the money at all. Right? We put it into the contingency fund.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to agree to
This
that.
scenario.
They don't have anything to agree to that.
People on the bottom end who get the higher bump.
What?
People on the bottom end were like, the proposals here, I'm gonna be down here, I'm not gonna be here for the most part. Based on their current salary, or either 10 or 11%, they're not probably gonna get to what the mayor has, but.
No, they're not, Tony. They're not gonna get to that. Because they're only gonna get 10% of 40,000. They're gonna get 4,000, so now they're gonna make 44,000. And the person at the top is making 100,000, is now gonna make 110,000. So they're getting $6,000 more, but they're at a higher, but they're also at a job that is, they didn't get paid more for nothing. They get paid more because of the responsibility of their job and the title of their job and what that job requires.
You get tell us what that's going to be.
So maybe a constant raise would not be a bad thing.
One other possibility here, John, would it be really difficult to figure out if we had, instead of one across the board percentage increase, if we had like a 3 tiers of increase? So for example, the folks who are in the 6 lowest grades would get, say, a 15% increase. The people in the middle 6 grades would get a 10% increase, and the people in the top 6 grades would get a 5% increase. Is that feasible, or is that out of the question?
I don't think I can run those numbers for tomorrow.
Uh-huh.
7 o'clock tomorrow.
We can give you till noon.
Phone paper, I'll bring the call.
I can do my best to give you an estimate, Rennie, but I wouldn't be able to break it out position by position. Really, to get a really good estimate, I would have to look at how many, take every position and determine what grade it's on it and run it. But I could try to average it out to give an idea. But with the understanding that it would come from contingency, the accuracy of the estimate.
I would say, Rennie, if you did that, it would be 2 tiers, not 3 tiers. Just the lowest paid people, 15%, and everybody else 10.
I think the one danger you have in that, though, is determining where you make that cliff, because if you make that cliff say you make it between, like right now you have 18 grades, right? But if you did that between, say, a grade 5 and a 6, I'm just throwing an example, you could inadvertently put a lower grade higher than a higher grade because you just gave them a bigger increase.
Yeah.
So yeah, particularly since some grades have virtually the same pay.
Making an arbitrary decision,
Right, didn't you just say that even our department heads aren't making commensurate pay with their rivals? Is that correct? You said our city clerk is not making similar pay to people in similar cities. So if we
with the ones that are larger than
raise on $70,000, she's going to make $77,000. That puts her right where she should be. That puts her right where she should be too. So we raise everybody, and now we're putting everybody where they should be. a little bit, except the lower people, and hopefully maybe in the next contract, we can negotiate that too. I don't know how to go about this, but I think we gotta try to be fair.
Agree with that. All right, so with the CSEA then, I've got three potential options. See if these capture what we talked about. Put all of the money, the $700,000 into contingency as assigned to the negotiators that we want to see them increase CSEA pay by that amount with any new structure to be determined. Second option is to keep the current pay increases as proposed and add longevity as a sign of our support to our long-term employees. Three would be an across-the-board increase of X percent. So we've talked about 11.5%. The advantage there is this would keep the current structure. The downside is that higher paid workers would get a higher actual increase. Or I mean, that's one thing to consider. I don't know if it's a downside.
Yeah, that's not a downside. It's okay. It's okay to pay people who deserve it.
Is there any other option there that you all would like on the table?
I think that's good.
I still think we need to look at the longevity on,
We are.
my proposal. No, he didn't mention about longevity.
You didn't mention longevity one, Rennie?
Yeah, longevity would, the way I mentioned it is that if we keep the current proposal to shift all the salaries with a de facto restructuring of the pay grades, we would add longevity in that option.
You know, and we got to keep in mind, negotiations are coming up. So we give this money now, negotiations come up. In the negotiations, like Rennie said, we can say, hey, when you go into those negotiations, please give our lowest paid people enough so that we're in line with the other municipalities around here. You know, we could say that at the next negotiation, right? Too, right? So we can give them some money now, and then direct our negotiators to do exactly what the mayor's trying to do now. You know what I mean? But in a maybe a little bit more in a maybe a little bit more appropriate manner, because it's negotiated through the union and it's done right, you know?
Well, and so that would be another variation here. So instead of doing an 11.5% increase across the board, we do 5% increase across the board and see, and then say that, you know, the other half of that money, the $350,000 we put into contingency to negotiate a new wage scale that would be higher still, but it would come down the line a bit.
I say give them the money now and then negotiate that kind of thing later. And we have to keep in mind, look what we did to these guys already. We didn't even keep up with inflation. We have to keep that in mind when we give these people raises. We have to be keeping up with inflation. In the next negotiation, we can keep that in mind.
I just think, I just want to raise it here. I think though, the budget as it stands right now has no provision in it for any retro pay for 2021, right? So that would have to be negotiated, right? So whatever percentage that is that, you know, the council's talking about, like you say, well, we want to do 5%. And you say, we're going to put 5% raise in the budget for each line, every employee, we're going to put 5% raise. And, you know, we want, you know, the negotiating team to go to the union and try to negotiate something with that. And we'll put the rest in contingency. The negotiating team could go to the union and the union may not be willing to forego retro. That, I mean, those,
So we have to think
those
about
are just complex things that you have to just consider.
So we have to consider retro too. So maybe the raise, the across the board raise could also consider retro in there. And then everybody would get the retro across the board, and then the new negotiation could be whatever we negotiate there. But we can start to think about how we pay our employees and, you know, what we pay them. You know, we can't always try to negotiate them down so far that we're in this situation again.
So maybe an option there would be to say, well, we'll suggest a 7% across the board increase. 2% would include retro pay, but I would be uncomfortable with saying that it includes retro pay because the union might come back right and say that was real retro pay.
No, we could just say we're gonna put this money away in contingency of the fact that we may have to pay retro. I mean, it's just a contingency fund, that's what it is. We're putting money in there just to protect ourselves from against a possibility of this happening in the next contract. It's not, we're not saying we're giving it to you, we're just saying there's a pot, we always do this, we always put money away for the next contract.
Right, so, but are you saying then, Patrick, give no raise whatsoever right now, put the whole $700,000 into contingency?
No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying if John comes up with a number, John can come up with a reasonable number about retro, if we think about that 11.5%, we take out, with the 11.5%, what retro would be for all of them in the next contract. We take that money out, maybe 100,000 or two, or 150,000. So we take out that 150,000 or $100,000, and we put that into contingency for next. We just do that for just because John, he knows his business, and he knows that may happen in the next contract. So now we've covered ourselves in the next contract, and we've given these people 9% raise. We've given everybody across the board 9%, and they all seem well deserving. The city clerk, the lowest lowest paid employee, they're all very deserving, and they all seem, from what you're saying, Rennie, is that they're all seem to be a little underpaid compared to their peers.
Yeah, well, I mean, you'd have to add that up and do an actual average. So, sure, okay. So, I'll treat that as a variant of possibility number 3, to take X percentage and put some more into contingency for future negotiation. So we got 3 issues there. Okay, so the way I have it, well, there are 2 more items that are on my list. So maybe we should go through those and then we can circle back and see about what the potential are for each of these. Because I think we're agreed on quite a number of these. I think we're agreed on dock repairs to some extent. We're agreed on computers. We're agreed mostly on the capital plan. So the other 2 items are the project managers and other departments and the $10,000 raise proposed for the mayor's position. You want to consider those first? Okay, so we've got project managers. There are 2 in the wellness department, but those are going to be paid for mostly through grant monies. John, can you clarify, are the benefits for those 2 positions, are those paid for by the city or are those covered by the grant money?
Which positions, Rennie?
The two positions, the 2 project managers in the health and wellness unit.
I thought they were grant money, but.
Just give me 1 second. I have a spreadsheet.
Now, Rennie, they're paid, both those positions are mainly being paid by grant money. Is that correct?
The salaries are, but I want John to check on the benefits part.
Were all 3 positions paid by grant money?
Yeah.
So all 3 of those positions are currently being paid by grant money?
The salaries are for sure, but I'm asking about the benefits. So it's, if the grants don't, but I know that Emily's got a grant that's going to carry her through for several more years. The other 2 positions, not as long, but if the grantor decides to take that money to not grant any more grants in the future, those jobs are gone.
Yeah, it's every 5 years, NOVA in New York State. That's where the money's coming from, grants. That's basically covering.
Right. And I believe Emily, when she came here, she spoke to that some of the benefits were the portion that weren't covered by the grant, because there was contractual limits with the funders, the funding, but, yeah, there is a small gap, a gap here with the benefits.
A few $1,000s, you mean?
Well, I mean, I'm looking at a spreadsheet that was provided to me. This was prior to, any adjustment in the salary scale. But essentially, yeah, there was a gap in the benefits. I can't tell you the exact amount right now, Rennie. Trying to find it. It looks like the gap in the benefits is around $51,000 or $52,000.
So the city pays $52,000 for the 3 employees. That'd be a deal. Are we having what's the justification that we need 3 people in the health and wellness department? Do we know?
We've got 3 grants to cover their salaries.
Thank you, Rennie.
But not their benefits, right?
About.
I mean, they're still costing us money.
Yeah.
We can't put one of them down on a truck?
Picking up yard waste, eh?
Right, exactly. Yard waste, they're not the same thing as.
They proposed as a project manager, which is a similar position to, the project manager that's in engineering.
In engineering.
So that's something to consider. There's also the project manager in Parks and Recreation. Lindsay wants to add one because of the large project of Deep Stadium. What do folks think about
I
that?
understand that one. I mean, that's going to be huge.
Like Lindsay said, she doesn't have those qualifications to be a project manager. If for something that scope, you have to have somebody who's going to be able to do that full time.
It's going to be a full-time job.
So unless you put it on one of the other project managers in the grants management thing, at least that person's going to have some extra duties. I think when we're up to maybe 4 people in that department now that we're proposing, or 5.
There's a nice piece of property on Joy's Lane right next to the pools. We should.
I mean, we have to look at how many what's the total project manager we were talking about in the, if we go that way, instead of this chief, we're going project manager, I think we were up to 4 in Ruth Ann's department, or was it up to 5?
Yeah, because it's 2 in Health and Wellness, the 1 in Parks and Recreation, and the 1 in the half, I guess, is in grants.
So how many? 4 or 3.5?
I think there's another half somewhere. I'm not remembering.
But we talked about putting a project manager in there to handle this ARC money and grants department. So I'm going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. If you got two half people, I think.
Right, but if we do the full-time one in the grants department to manage ARPA, that potentially at least the salary for that, monies for that would be paid for by the ARPA money itself.
Beautiful. Half of it anyway.
Yeah, or a significant portion.
Then what that salary is going to start at. It's going to be less. I think they need a project manager in at Deep Stadium. Maybe that's the question next week, Dan, how many projects does she have outstanding? Her, John Schultez. I mean,
Uh-huh.
I got that book, but I don't know how exactly to go through and see. But again, as I stated before, we're always getting new grants coming in. If we need people there, we can't say, oh, well, if we need you, we'll call you back.
Right.
Tony, you seen that piece of property right next to the pools there on Joyce Lane empty? About an acre, about half an acre.
That's good.
It'd be nice to buy that property for D Stadium.
Yeah.
Patrick, you looking for a job?
No?
All right.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So like this project, before you go in, this is the latest update that Ruth Van gave to us as of November 16th, 2021. The number of projects is 47 at this time. And and you got it? I can't, oh yeah, all right. So it's, 16 million here. That's not including the art money, and that's not including, well, these statements are probably in there for project. So,
Yeah,
we gotta make sure we have enough people that can cover the projects and keep up on them.
yeah. Well, and we're seeing too, like in Parks and Recreation in there, they've got almost $7 million in grants that they're working economic development. There's $22 million in grants, transportation, $2 million in grants. So we definitely need project managers. The question is, are these the right ones, the ones that are in the current budget? I know too that Kristen Wilson was very much advocating for a more hours in the grants department, but it didn't make it into the budget. So, I just think that that's a place where we really need to have some more person power, particularly with the ARPA coming in. I agree too that if we're going to have a $16 million project with each stadium, that's going to require definite work. So, I share concerns about these potentially becoming long-term when these particular projects are over, but we also do have the power to end them.
Good power to end them, and then also in the meantime, it's probably most likely going to be new grants that come in.
I'm sorry, what, Tony?
Probably meantime, there's going to be new grants that are coming in.
Well, that's true.
Whatever, that's still going to need, a person to help manage it. All right, so if some of these are dropping off, the city's is always going out and getting more grants. And it's not just getting the grants. You got to have people who can write them, right? Write a proposal, do all that needs to be done before we award a grant. And then you have to have somebody who's got to implement or follow through. So, but it's always the city, the council always has the power to eliminate these positions if it's not something happening.
Well, and I kind of go along with that. The more grants we have, the less money we have to pull in from tax revenues. So to a great extent, the more robust our grants programs and management of them, that affords us the power to keep our tax levy at the same rate year after year. Anything else then on that, project managers? If anybody has any other thoughts, of course, bring them in tomorrow night. If you want to augment or delete, you need to think about what that might mean for other parts of the budget. So just keep that in mind. The last thing I have on my list, at least, is the mayor's request for a $10,000 increase. This is harks back to our discussion 2 years ago of trying to increase the pay of both the mayor and the common council. to reach commensurate levels with other municipalities. And we talked about trying to get the mayor's office increased to, I believe it's $100,000 with $5,000 increments over several years, and then increasing the common council once or twice to get up closer to $10,000. But there's no proposal for the common council in this budget. I'm fine with that if you all are. But what about this proposal for $10,000 increase for the mayor's office to cover the lack of increase last year and the one that we had discussed potentially for each of the coming several years? Don Tollerman?
I think it's well deserved. I think that he's, by other city standards, we pay our mayor at the lower end. He manages a staff of over 300 people, and you compare that to private industry, the same responsibility level would be paid double. Get a couple $100,000, and we need to keep pace with other cities. In the future, we need to have a competitive salary to attract good quality candidates. So I don't have any problem whatsoever with this $10,000 increase.
Other thoughts? Rita Worthington?
Yeah, I would be in favor of giving the mayor the $5,000 increase. We did pass that saying that, yes, we would do the 5,000 raise every year. I know he in good faith forfeited it last year, but so did a lot of other employees because of COVID. Many of them did not get raises or decided not to get it because of the pandemic. But I would be in favor of getting back on track with those raises and giving him the 5,000, as I'm taking it as in good faith he decided not to take the raise last year.
Steve Shabbat?
Yeah, somebody refresh my memory from last year. What was the rationale for him giving it up? I know he gave it up last year for COVID, but was it he was giving it up altogether, or was there any discussion about it carrying over to this year? I don't remember.
No, there was no discussion of saying we're going to hold it in abeyance till next year. The idea was totally COVID related, that we were concerned about potential economic calamities. And so that's why we didn't take an increase as we had talked about the year before. The mayor didn't take an increase. I'm personally in favor of us still taking no increases, either us or the mayor, because I think there's still some potential for economic downturn. We're in a kind of iffy time, but I'm not adamant about it either.
He's X for 10,000. Because he gave it 5 previous year.
He wants to keep on track.
Yeah, so
Let's get back
right now
on track.
it's 80. So he was extra 10,000 to make up for the 5,000 he forfeited last year, right?
Yep.
Okay.
The other option there would be to say, well, we'll wait until the 2 years later and just increase the salary to $100,000 for whoever wins the next mayor's race. So that's another option.
This city should be run by a part-time mayor with about the same amount of people in town. Now, I know there's other things that have happened. What?
Probably more people.
More people. And of course, our police department's down, our DPW workers are down. So there's actually less employees probably than there was back then. So I understand he's running a big, but many people ran the city before him on a lot less money, on half pay. You remember Mr. Koenig, was part-time mayor, and then we went to just a strong mayor, role. And of course, he was took on maybe some more responsibilities. That's just something to keep in mind when you say, what a task it is. Is it a task? Yes, it is a task. Do we have to think about his increased duties? Remember, he's serving about the same amount of people we had when we had a part-time man.
Okay.
I think we should also take into consideration how much is getting done. A lot of projects have been completed, a lot of projects are in the pipeline, and a lot of people are interested in our city, are investing in our city. I think that's a direct, it's at least partially, but I would say a lot. People are coming here and investing here because they are comfortable with the mayor. So,
Well, I would suggest that we shouldn't think of this as a referendum on the mayor, the particular person in the office. Our original rationale was solely in terms of a peer evaluation between what we pay and what other municipalities of a similar size pay. So I don't want to make this a referendum on the specific person.
well, I agree with that, but according to your spreadsheet, he is in the lower end of that scale, is that correct?
No. Right now, he's at 80,000. So he's in the middle. There's a few municipalities that are 90, 95. So if he gets up to 90, if he's equivalent to
Top guys.
close to the top guys, yeah. Middletown pays more, according to this information, and Poughkeepsie pays, if he gets to 90, well, Poughkeepsie pays the equivalent, and Rome pays a little bit more. But other than that,
Well, he's right in the ballpark. He's right in the ballpark, so it's not, whatever we do here is not gonna be.
but I think that we had talked, some years, 2 months ago, about increasing his salary to get him paddle. And so, if it's 5,000 or if it's 10,000, I think we need to continue on that track, regardless of the mayors, and that's what we have set as a goal for this mayor to get it for, I think it was 4 years or something, that increase to get it up there.
5, it's 25,000.
Yeah. So
You want to get to 100.
Yeah, I mean, that also, those calculations were based on an earlier survey from NICOM. And so in this current survey, it's looking to me like the actual average would be lower than $100,000, because I don't see anybody on this list getting $100,000. The highest I see is 95.
Right.
Yeah, right. So, and I see a 90 and a 91. But then
At what
there's
point would he,
only one other 80,000 in there.
at what point would he be making more than anyone else, any other mayor?
What we're doing, 5,000 in.
No, 10,000 this year, and then 5,000 going forward. At what point would he be making more than anybody else?
Does that include city managers?
If he gets that 10,000 more, if we give him the 9,
No, strong mayor.
he'll be making more than anybody on this list.
I'm sorry, Tony, when?
If the council was to approve the 10,000, to jump him up to 90, in 2 more years, basically, I think was it gonna be 5,000 every year?
Yeah.
Yeah, he would get, in 2 years, where the mayor would be making $100,000, which would be equivalent from, currently be more than anybody else on this list.
When's he up for election again?
23.
So in 2 years, so in 1 year, so it would be at like 95,000 when the election comes up, right?
If we do 10 this year, if not, then it'd be 85, and next year it'd be 90, and then the following year it'd be 95.
That seems in line.
Um,
At that point, he would be equal to anybody on this list, or not either. I should
Well,
say.
assuming that they don't change either now.
Yeah, so they don't change.
They're gonna probably go up as well.
Well, yeah,
Maybe, maybe not.
you don't always know that ever go up. I mean, some are real low, but you never stable.
Depends on the economy.
So you gotta take that into consideration too. 5 versus 10.
I would note that a strict average here of the 20 of the 19 cities that I've got in the list is 67,500. But you know, like Rye, New York doesn't pay anything to the mayor, neither does Long Beach. And 1 or 2 cities are very low at 14,000, 10,000. So I mean, we could look at a more apt.
They're outliers.
So maybe that's something to do. I'll try to do that tonight. Come up with a clearer figure there. Yeah, because I think at this point, 100,000 is too high. And it seems to me more like 90,000 would be the appropriate. Michelle Hirsch?
Thanks, Tony. I just wanted to point out that, well, number one, I wasn't here 2 years ago when that figure was agreed to, the 5,000 a year. But
Yeah.
I'm of the opinion that that should be honored to bring him up in line as we are with all our other employees. And there are employees in the city that actually make more than the mayor. And he's there could be more coming up that would be making more than him. So I just wanted to point that out as well. It's not just about in comparison to other cities, but in comparison to who works below him.
Yeah. Right now, about 3 or 4 people make more than him.
Well, in years past, most of the employees made more than the mayor. It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I don't see that as a bad thing either, Michelle, because if you think about it, the proposal that the mayor is thinking about when it comes to these raises, that would put some of our workers below department heads, making more and or the same as some of those employees. So, you know, I don't think that's an issue. I think that's just the way that it's been and the way that it always has been in any municipality that you look in.
And if you think about it, the mayor's job is a 4-year gig. It's 4 years, right? It's not a 30-year career. He can get reelected again, and then he's got another 4 years. It starts again. So he's coming. The new mayor may be coming in with no experience, but we're treating that new mayor like they have all the experience in the world. That's not true. Just because they've been elected official, I know they move into that job, but does that really mean they should be getting the highest pay in the city of Kingston because they got elected mayor? Probably not. They're new to the job. It's going to be tough. There's a learning curve. They're coming in at the highest salary. I don't know. That doesn't necessarily make sense to me. That a person who comes in for only 4 years is going to make the highest salary in the city. I mean, I know we need, like Don said, we need to make it appealing, but do we need to pay them the same salary that somebody who's been here 30 years, a department head, is making? No, that's not necessary. And the mayor should understand that coming in. I'm a 4-year employee. This man's been here, this woman's been here 30 years. Of course I'm not going to make the same as them. And if we think we need to do that, we're probably wrong.
It goes back to the salary of the city. I said that
4-year job.
One guy that's coming in, beginning, making the same as somebody that's been there 30 years. You're going to take that same rationale.
All right, so we've got then, as I have it, 3 options on the table. 0% increase, $0 increase, $5,000 increase, or $10,000 increase. Any other option you all want on the table to think about?
The only thing I wanted to add, you can convince me otherwise. I mean, the only reason I would go along with giving him the increase is because we did kind of negotiate that. As Michelle said, we made a commitment to that. You know, I'm not sure that I feel real comfortable going back on that. I
Well,
mean,
then what Rita said would hold to that. He gave his, you know, he decided last year not to take the pay raise. We could go forward from here, maybe, or give, what kind of increase would we need to give him to meet, to be at the top of his, game here, Tony? Would it be 15,000? Would it be
Top of the
Yeah.
mayor's list? Yeah, you would have to.
How much?
Right now he's at 80, the top is 95 on this.
I say we give him 15,000. Can you put that into? Give him 15, go right to the top. We got the highest paid mayor in the thing. We deserve that kind of quality.
Yeah, but I'm
Not a bad idea either.
That's not a good show thing that we're throwing $15,000 at the mayor at this point when other people are not getting raises at all. If anything, I'd be in favor of and continue with the $5,000 increments until that position gets to what we had.
yeah, I 15, 5's one thing.
All right?
I don't know.
Yes, and remember also, this $5,000 increment wasn't for this specific mayor. This was for the position in general.
Right.
Okay, so the mayor opting out of not taking his raise last year was of his own doing, and it was for a good reason. I give him a lot of credit for that, but many others did the same thing. And so, the rationale is if we give it to him, what do we do about everybody else?
Hey, John, did we give any kind of COVID pay to any of our employees, like our DPW guys who are out there picking up trash during COVID and all that stuff, and 3 in the truck and all that, remember? It's horrible. We didn't give them any COVID pay, nothing, not a dime extra to go out there in that. Remember, we were all scared to death, and these guys were out there in trucks and stuff? I remember that. We didn't give them anything, nothing, zero, zip. And those people were on the front lines.
So I did a quick calculation here. I took the 10 highest salaries, not including Kingston. And then the average of those comes out to $75,300.
One more time, Rennie, can you say that again?
I would check this, but I took the 10 highest salaries in this list of population of municipalities close to us in population. I took the 10 highest, not including Kingston. So they range from 50,000 to 95,000. And the average of those 10 is $75,300.
Thank you.
I'm not sure what the mean would be, but I guess it'd be 70. I guess that's close to the mean also.
Arrange them from smallest to largest and look for the middle number, Rennie.
Oh, that sounds like actual work.
Too late for that.
And if they're even, you gotta look at the 2 middle numbers and divide by 2, Rennie.
All right. So anyway, we've got 3 options here. Are we good with those 3 options to make a final decision tomorrow night?
What are they again? 0?
0, 5,000, or 10,000?
What happened to my 15?
You can raise that tomorrow night if you want to. So the what was I going to say? Their salary. So at 10,000, or the other thing is if we're talking about an average 11% increase, that would not be $10,000 for the mayor's office. That would be more like, like 8,000 and change. Right, so that's another way to consider it, I
So
suppose.
that's another consideration, give them whatever the workers are getting, same
Yeah,
percentage.
yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah. So, and that would have the effect of making it clear that we're doing the increase according to that calculation as opposed to anything else. So there's some merit there, I suppose. All right. Well, I'll do that. I'll put that in as a fourth option. And that might bring us back to also management confidential, that if we're going to increase the mayor's salary by X percent, we might want to consider raising all of management confidential by at least that same percent. That might be an equitable approach here. All right, anything else then?
Randy, that sounds like a decent idea to present also.
Yeah, it does. It's right in the middle.
Okay, I'll write that one down as well. Anything else? Sounds like we've had enough then.
Done?
Yeah, come back and get it tomorrow.
All right, so tomorrow, like I said, I don't know when I can get this done, but I'll try to get it done as early as I can tomorrow. And I'll send around the various options. And so what I think we'll do is with each one, we'll start with a straw poll and just see where we are on any particular one. And then we'll let discussion proceed from there. Does that sound okay to folks? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. All right then. Get your pencil sharpened, and we'll see you all tomorrow night.
Good night, everybody. Thanks. Good night.
Everybody, thanks, Ronnie.
Good night, all.
Good night.
Thanks for being with us all the way through.